And we are back.
Hey, you guys. Merry Christmas.
Yep.
I can't believe that we haven't talked about this movie. But actually, I'm kind of glad that we haven't because now we can use this for the Christmas episode because this is going up on actual Christmas Day. Unless you're a patron.
Yeah, this is a classic. This is a classic one. I think the reason why we haven't done it is just because it's kind of a given. I think everybody's reviewed this one, huh?
Probably, yeah. There's a shit ton of reviews of this and of the sequel and stuff like that too.
Movie's Gremlins.
Yeah. Now, somebody sent us this. It might have been Louis, or it might have been Michael, or it might have been... Because I'm trying to think of, because there's a couple of our fans out there that always send us a bunch of movies.
Yeah, it was a Blu-ray 4K.
And we got, the 4K Blu-ray, a while back. So I've been wanting to review this for a while, but I was going to do it before, but then I was like, I should save it until Christmas, and we should do it for Christmas time, because it's essentially like a Christmas movie. It takes place around Christmas time. Although, you know what's dumb? This always, freaked me out. It doesn't freak me out, but, This came out in 1984, and it came out in the theaters in June of 1984. Why did they not put it out at Christmas time? Who fucking knows?
Maybe they couldn't get the slot.
I guess not. This actually came out the same day as Ghostbusters.
Really?
And Ghostbusters was number 1, and this movie was number 2.
Man, it's funny. I didn't remember that.
1984 was a hell of a year.
Yeah.
I think Beverly Hills Cop ended up being, was in the top 4 that year also.
Okay.
But it didn't come out at the same time. But Gremlins and Ghostbusters came out on the exact same day. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And those are both fucking classics.
Yeah.
From the 80s. And the fact they came out the same day, that just blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, that whole time, man, it just kind of blurs together. I kind of forget what came out in what order and what was going on at the same time.
Yeah, me too.
Wasn't Flash Gordon in around this time too?
I thought Flash Gordon was much earlier.
Was it earlier?
I thought Flash Gordon was late 70s.
No.
Or early 80s.
No, it was early 80s. It might have been 82, 83, something like that.
Yeah, this was 84.
Okay.
Now, the weird thing about this, though, is that I distinctly remember seeing Ghostbusters in the theater, but I don't think I saw this one in the theater. I'm not entirely sure why, because this would have been right up my alley. I would have been how old would I have been? I was 12 when this came out. And I remember seeing Ghostbusters in the theater, but not this one, which is really weird. Maybe we could only afford to go to one movie a week, and Ghostbusters was the one we saw, so we didn't see Gremlins. Yeah. I saw it later. I saw it a year or two later on cable or VHS or something.
Yeah.
So this movie was directed by Joe Dante. Now, as well known as Joe Dante is nowadays, particularly for doing horror comedy, he also did The Burbs, which we reviewed. The only really major thing he had done before this movie was The Howling, which had been in 1981. And then he kind of went into this little career lull a little bit. Now, the interesting thing about this fucking script, the Gremlin script, which was actually much darker, when it started out, which I'll get into in a bit. But this script was written, and it originally wasn't even supposed to be made into a movie. It was written as a spec script that because writers, screenwriters will write a spec script so they can go around to producers and say, hey, look, I can actually write a screenplay, but that's not necessarily the movie that's going to get made.
Right.
But for somehow, Steven Spielberg ended up reading the screenplay and thinking it kicked ass. So he's like, I'm just going to buy this and make this into a movie. And so he was the producer on it, and he wanted Joe Dante to direct it because Joe Dante had already done horror comedy with The Howling. And even though he didn't really get known for horror comedy until after this movie came out, because he also made The Burbs, like I said, and some other things. But I guess The Howling made enough of an impression on Steven Spielberg that he wanted him for this material. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. So I guess the dude that wrote it, he was kind of I got the idea not only from... I guess it was a book by Roald Dahl that came out in the 1940s that was called The Gremlins. And, Gremlins were kind of like a World War II thing. When machinery, airplanes, shit like that failed, it was, it's little gremlins or whatever. And of course they had that Twilight Zone.
Just meant glitches.
Too. Yeah, glitches, but they were attributing to little monsters.
Spirits.
Little spirits. And so he kind of got the idea to do that. Now, like I said, the original screenplay, and it's funny because I have seen this movie a lot of times. But I watched it again last night and I hadn't seen it for several years. And I always forget how violent it is.
Yeah.
Because basically not supposed to be a kids movie, but it also kind of comes across like a kids movie. But then it's like there's some like really crazy like horror shit in there, which I think is really funny.
They did a lot of stuff that you wouldn't do today.
Yeah.
And when I saw him put the damn head of the gremlin in the fireplace and it was burning and melting, I was like, damn, I forgot that that's how the 80s rolled. Even though I grew up during that time, that wasn't unusual. I was just like, yeah, burn it. But nowadays they wouldn't put that in a movie that they thought that they thought would attract kids, I think.
Well, I think
we were hardcore back then.
Well, back then there was actually, it's funny to think about now because it's such a classic now. But back then, there was a lot of pearl clutching, like a lot of parents, hey, I took my 4-year-old to see what I thought was going to be this cute kids movie by the dude that made E.T., and it has like a cute little mogwai in it, and then all of a sudden, gremlins are getting like chopped up and in the fucking mixer and like blown up in the microwave and shit like that.
I was a kid when I saw it. I didn't give a shit. I thought it was cool. I was like, yeah. I was a teenager, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was 12 when this came out, so it's not like it was any kind of traumatizing, anything like that. I could see how if you were 4 and you thought it was a kids movie about a cute, sweet little creature that sings and like talks all cute and everything, and then suddenly it took a hard left turn into horror. I can see how maybe that could be traumatizing if you're 4.
I didn't really think it was horror, but
it's
more like sci-fi adventure.
It's a comedy horror. It's basically what it is. It's like a black comedy, but it's also an homage to 50s B movies, like monster movies. Because Joe Dante is really, really into those cheesy old 50s B movies. And he even put like a bunch of them in the background of this, you know what I mean? Like on TVs and shit like that. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say that because as many times I've seen this movie, and I'm glad that some other people on YouTube have pointed this out because I never noticed this until we were watching it last night. The one scene where Billy's dad is at the, invention convention or whatever the fuck it is. And, I noticed like the robot from Forbidden Planet, okay, because that like walks in front. I noticed the Steven Spielberg cameo who goes by in the wheelchair or whatever. But I never noticed in the back, I noticed the time machine, like from the movie, the time machine, the H.G. Wells one, the movie that came out with, what's his face, like Robert Taylor was that guy's name? I can't remember that actor's name. But that was in it. What I didn't notice was that in the next scene, the time machine was gone. And there's smoke. And there's smoke. And then there's 2 people dressed in kind of like 40s clothes going, where the fuck am I? Yeah. Like, it worked. I did not, time machine worked. I did not notice that until last night. And I just like laughed and laughed. Yeah. I noticed the time machine, but I didn't notice that it was gone like in the next one. So I thought that was like really, really funny. But there's all kind of like, there's on the TV, like during the movie, there's some shit from like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and there's all that kind of stuff. I mean, because essentially what this movie is, it's like a Christmas version. It's kind of like, it's got a little bit of It's a Wonderful Life in it, but it's also like kind of like The Blob because it's just kind of like this infection that like takes over the whole town. Yeah. And even the way that it was shot, because it was shot all on a set. And, it was shot like Warner Brothers Studios, like the back lot and everything. It's the same back lot that they use for Back to the Future. You know what I mean? So you can see it looks kind of familiar, like the movie theater and stuff. So they set it all up like that, but he wanted that kind of look. He wanted a fake look because he wanted it to look like old movies that were all shot on sets. So, and if you see like the long shots, like of the town, like Kingston Falls and stuff, there's like the backgrounds are matte paintings, like to make the town look bigger.
I remember seeing this as a kid, and the special effects really blew me away back then, like the way the gremlins look, the puppets. And I was amazed, I see it now, and I'm like, I recognize all the tricks.
Well, you know how they do it.
I know how they do it now, But I was like, how'd they get those arms to move like that? Well, the little wire is so thin, and the camera can't pick it up. That's
there's different kinds of puppets.
Right. Yeah.
They built the set. Some of the sets they had to build like 3 or 4 feet off the ground so you could have like puppeteers underneath. Yeah. So, if you were interacting with a puppet that was down here and you didn't have to see the floor, then obviously the puppeteer would be underneath, just like on the Muppets.
Yeah. And back in those days, I was quite impressed. I was very impressed. Well, I see it now and I'm just like, it's a good.
It still looks good, I think.
The effects are still good. But they didn't look as good as I remembered them back then. But I don't know if it's because I was watching it on CRT TVs a lot, and it just kind of hid the kind of plasticky textures of the bodies. I remember them looking real. No, they don't really look real.
Yeah,
they look good, but they don't look real.
They look like I said, it's kind of like Muppets in the sense that you know that they're not real, like they're obviously puppets, but they still have a life to them. So it's very easy to suspend your disbelief and saying these are like real little creatures. Yeah. Because when I watch it, I don't think about, oh, there's a puppeteer. I'm just like, oh, it's just like a little monster running around.
But back in the day, these special effects were fucking state of the art.
Yeah, people were just like amazed,
blown away by it. Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, this coming out the same day as Ghostbusters, which had the amazing fucking Stay Puft Marshmallow Man
that looked
thing,
good
and that looks really good and everything too, which was just done with miniatures and back projection or green screen or whatever. But it's like, and that still looks amazing. But this, I mean, like I said, it's a combination of what they did when they did close-ups. They would have like the head was bigger. So some of the puppets, they just had the heads like Gizmo's head and Stripe's head. They just had one that was just a head, but it was bigger, and they used like servos and stuff like to control the face because the smaller puppets, they wanted them to be little. Because I think the puppeteers complained initially to Joe Dante and was like, "Can we please like make these creatures like Gizmo and stuff? Can we make them bigger because it's such a pain like to get them to move realistically, but they're because they're so small." And Joe Dante was like, no, it's like Gizmo particularly has to be that small because his cuteness is like the whole kind of thing to it. Yeah. So they can't make him bigger. So they had to like make some bigger versions of his head like for close-ups and whatnot. So you could see like the expression in his face. So basically what I was going to say too is that the original version of this screenplay, I mean, and we mentioned before, like I said, if you haven't seen Gremlins, I don't know what the fuck planet you're from, because I feel like everybody has seen this fucking movie at least once.
At least older people have seen it.
At least older people have seen it, and I feel like a lot of younger people have seen it too, because like I said, a lot of younger people that I've seen like review movies like on their YouTube channels, like pretty much everybody has for this.
Yeah, and everybody's kind of going back to the 80s and the 90s stuff that was going on anyway. There's classic era.
Yeah, so I'd be very, very surprised if you hadn't seen Gremlins. Like I said, I know that there's probably some people that haven't, but, it's just... I feel like it's an American classic and everybody needs to see it at least once. But as dark as this movie is, like I said, the original batch of Gremlins that comes from, Gizmo... They all get killed by Billy's mom because Billy's mom don't take no shit from no gremlins, and she just fucking, like I said, she blows one up in the microwave. She decapitates one, and like the head goes into the fire and shit like that. So, and people do die in this. Like the gremlins kill people. They kill Billy's science teacher. They kill that cranky old bat that was played by Polly Holliday, who was Flo on Alice. I was like, man, Flo's such a bitch in this. I forgot. But, so people do die in this. But in the original screenplay, Billy's mom was actually killed and decapitated by the gremlins. And, like, Billy came home and, like, his mom's head, like, rolled down the stairs. In the original screenplay, the gremlins also ate Billy's dog, which... I was kind of like, the dog got kind of abused in this one too, like, because I think the gremlins like tied him up in all the Christmas lights and he was out there like hanging, which kind of, I was like, oh shit, that's upsetting. I didn't remember that being in there. But there was all kind of other shit like that where it was like way more mayhem, like a lot of people got killed like in horribly, horribly violent ways. So I guess once they decided to go in a little bit of a more black comedy direction, they decided to tone down the violence a little bit. And like I said, even doing that, a lot of parents, particularly very, very young children who had mistakenly perceived that this was a kid's movie, took little kids to see it, and the kids were freaking out because it was kind of like,
I remember the shit was PG.
It was
not
PG.
A G-rated shit.
It was PG. And actually, this movie and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom were the first two movies that... those two movies were the ones that got the MPAA to say, well, we need another rating between PG and R. So that's where PG-13 came from. This wasn't the first movie to have a PG-13 rating because this was just a PG. I think Red Dawn was the first one that had a PG-13, actually. But this and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the, the heart ripping out and all that kind of shit were kind of the impetus for making that rating. Because they're like, we want something that it's like, it's not... violent enough to be an R, because this probably isn't violent enough to be an R, but it's still not really for kids either.
It had humorous elements, but in terms of like acceptability for kids and shit, I'd put it up there with like Poltergeist.
Yeah,
Not like that.
if your kid could handle Poltergeist,
Being Alex,
now
yeah.
Poltergeist is way scarier than Gremlins.
Yeah.
Gremlins has like
I'm talking
violence.
about the graphic content. Though.
Yeah,
It's about the
yeah,
same.
yeah. Like Gremlins is violent, but the violence is kind of like played off as being like funny or like farcical kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think it's quite. And plus, it's like a lot more. I mean, like I said, Poltergeist just seems like a normal family, and then it's like ghosts and shit. So it's like a lot less. I don't want to say it's less fantasy based because obviously, like a lot of the shit that happens in that is just like way the fuck out there. But I mean, if you're gonna talk about how likely is it that ghosts exist versus how likely is it that these types of gremlins exist, I mean, Poltergeist is like slightly on more believable. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that that's like way scarier. So it's but like I said, this is way like a way funnier movie. Oh, can we talk too about, this is another thing that I didn't realize until I watched it last night, was that Billy's dad in this, the inventor, is played by Hoyt Axton, who I knew was a country music guy, and then he kind of became an actor later on. What I didn't realize until I was watching it last night and was listening to his voice was that is the same singer that did the theme song for Mitchell with Joe Don Baker, which was on Mystery Science Theater, which was one of like the biggest, like one of their most popular episodes. And he did that terrible, terrible theme song called like My Mitchell or whatever the fuck it was. And it's like, cause I'm sitting there going, that's the dude that did Mitchell? Because I was like, I know that fucking voice cause I've seen that episode so many times. And then when I looked it up today, I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was. That's like fucking thing. But it's like, so the interesting thing about this movie, and like I said, everybody's seen this movie, so you know what it's about. Billy gets like an adorable little, creature for his birthday that his dad bought, or for Christmas rather, that his dad bought in Chinatown. And, there are very, very specific rules. Don't get him wet. Don't feed him after midnight. Yes, I know a lot of people have said it's always after midnight somewhere. How the fuck, when's the cutoff? You know what I mean? I just assumed it was like sunrise. Like, don't feed them between midnight and sunrise, wherever you are. But then people are like, what if they're on a plane? What if they're, you know what I mean? What if they're on a satellite?
That's
what if
not
they're
the
in
thinking
space?
of the time.
I know. It's like, just don't think about it too much.
That's not the thinking of the time.
Like I said, I just thought, don't eat after midnight. And then, like, once the sun comes up, it's safe again. That's what I thought. But, you know what I mean? I wasn't thinking about it too much. But, and you're not supposed to do any of that stuff. So, the shitty thing, too, is that, like, as soon, like, Billy has had this tiny little creature for literally maybe an hour or two, and it just immediately starts whiffing it, like all over the place. It's like the fucking, Corey Feldman comes over and, like he does, and he just, knocks fucking water onto the poor little thing. And, and then when they feed him after midnight, that's technically not Billy's fault because they chewed through the wire so the clock would stop, so he still thought it was 11:30 and he still thought it was safe. But yeah, so one thing that I had forgotten about rewatching this movie again, other than like I had forgotten how upsetting that was that the dog got hung up in the lights and everything, because I was like, that poor fucking dog. One thing that always kind of...
The dog was alive, though, from whatever.
Yeah, he was. Like I said, in the original script, he got eaten by the gremlins, okay. So I guess he fared much better in the actual final movie. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was that Billy seemed, like when he got Gizmo, you would think this is a new species. This is an animal that has never seen, and this is clearly a very intelligent species because he can kind of talk. I mean, he says bright light. He says things like that. He can say sorry. He says uh-oh. He says stuff like that. So he obviously has some like human-like intelligence because, Billy's like playing the keyboard or whatever, and he's like, oh no, that was the wrong note, and he can do shit like that. I feel like if that was me or if that was real life, I feel like I'd be like much more amazing. You know what I mean? Because Billy's just kind of like, oh cool, and then they just kind of start hanging out. You know what I mean? Like it's like not even a thing.
That was also not the thinking of the time.
I guess not.
No.
I guess looking at it now, I'd be like, that's a whole undiscovered species.
But that's not how things were.
He's smart.
That's not how you looked at things back then.
He talks and
back
everything.
In those days, if you saw a UFO, right, and an extraterrestrial, ET comes out of there, you grab that sucker, you sell his ass. That's how you did it back then. Sell it.
I do kind of feel like that some of that bleeds through because
right. It's just, look, we got it. This is ours. Hey, fuck all these other people. We're gonna figure this out. This
manifest destiny, motherfucker.
Yeah. Manifest another species. It's okay. I got this.
Dominion over the earth.
It just doesn't. It didn't.
That's what God said.
It didn't. People didn't think that way.
I guess not. But like I said, it's just really funny watch. Although I remember like being kind of weirded out by it at the time too. Like even when I was 12, because he gets this amazing little creature.
Yeah, but you have to remember he got it from the Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay, which that explains everything.
Oh, okay.
Now you understand?
Yeah. Yeah, he got it from the magical Asians.
Yeah, it was just China, and it's way far away.
Nobody's been there. It's a mythical country.
Anything could happen. Well, it's from China.
Yeah.
Big
Trouble in Little China also kind of played on that as well.
Think it is in that in the thinking of the day.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the joke. Was this from SNL, like the Coneheads, where basically they're the Coneheads, but everyone said they're from France, and everyone was just kind of like, oh, all right, fair enough.
That makes sense, yeah.
So maybe that's what it was.
That's exactly what it was.
Well, maybe he was parodying that. Maybe he was parodying it's like, oh, the mystical Orient or whatever, and it's like, so they get this.
Well, we believed in also that fucking kung fu was real.
That's true.
That. All right, so
that's true.
So, yeah, if it came from China, then they might have some shit like that there in China. And then China, that's kind of normal. The little kid sold it. He said, Granddad's dumb. He doesn't, we need the money. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It's just a mugwai.
Yeah, it's we got shit tons of
them back in China.
China's lousy with them.
Yeah.
Little mogwai everywhere.
We're sick of them things. They don't taste good.
It's like tribbles, kind of. I was actually thinking about tribbles. It's like they're super cute, but it's like everybody's like, yes, they're just everywhere.
I grew up during that era. I understand the thinking at the time.
Well, I did too, but it's just like I was just saying.
You're getting too conscious. You're getting too like world conscious behind it. This is another species. Man, we didn't give a shit about that.
Well, yeah, and like I said, and immediately, like I said, they immediately start fucking up the rules. Admittedly, not on purpose, really, but he's not being super, super careful, which I would be, like, because even if it wasn't like, a totally undiscovered species, this is obviously an intelligent creature. Like I said, he can talk and he reacts like a human would react.
Yeah, but he can't spell, so.
So I feel like you would be a lot more careful, like you know what I mean, to adhere to the rules of his little life.
No, I just
take care of him.
I remember
that's
just accepting it.
Well, everybody did.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. It's just a movie. It's like,
from China, and they got that kind of shit.
Yeah. But yeah, because I was saying too that as soon as like Corey Feldman comes over and knocks water on your mogwai, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud, but and he has that gross thing where he starts like popping all those little fur balls off his back, and then they also grow into mogwai, and then everybody's just kind of like, huh. Like, it's like nobody like flips out or anything.
No.
And then the dad is immediately, well, shit, man, let's pour more water on him. And then we'll have millions of these things and we can sell them. We'll be millionaires.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is like the mom looks like a housewife, right? I mean, she doesn't like go to work or anything. And the dad is an inventor, but he's a shitty inventor. Yeah. I'm like, who is paying the mortgage on that house?
But remember, he was doing direct sales.
Okay.
He was walking around just selling things to random people.
But I'm just saying.
He tried to sell an ashtray.
A smokeless ashtray.
Smokeless ashtray. So
to that guy.
He was inventing shit, making it in his own house, and walking around selling these inventions, and he was able to support his family, which is a very childlike concept, even back then. I mean, well, maybe that's why Billy had to work at the bank, because he was trying to like support his dad was like a loser that couldn't like make any money. Well, you wouldn't be able to support your family and pay for that house.
I know.
I guess it's implied that some of those inventions are good, and he's selling the ideas to companies.
Maybe,
but companies don't need ideas; they have ideas of their own.
I just kind of love too, like the mom character in this is so great, because not only is she like a gremlin killing badass, and she's just like not having it, but she's also like really supportive of her husband's work, even though he's terrible at it. Yeah. Like even she uses all the gadgets, even though they don't work, and you don't have to use them.
That reminds me of around this era. They're not labor saving; they're labor making devices.
Exactly. Exactly.
That reminds me of around this era, there was an infomercial that they would constantly play on TV, like a commercial during the times when, like, Geraldo, in between Geraldo and Sally Jesse Raphael, about if you're an inventor, we can help you.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember that? We can help you make it rich on your great inventions. Just do this and that and call it. And that was a scam.
Of course it was.
You show up and then you're on a 1-800 number. They're talking to you for an hour about your damn inventions. Probably racking up fucking $20-$30 worth in telephone fees. And then you probably have to give them $400 to fucking
make a prototype or some shit.
No, to submit the paperwork for your invention. I'd imagine that they made fucking thousands and thousands of dollars just submitting useless paperwork.
Oh, I'm sure.
Off of fucking nuts in their trailers who think that they have
that they've invented like the next big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I'm
not
coat hanger.
It's like I don't want to shit on inventors because, to be fair, like some really, really dumb shit has made like millions of dollars. Like sometimes you see something like that really, really stupid. Like look at the fucking pet rock, for Christ's sake. Like some guy just came up with it. He's like, hey, I'm gonna find a rock and stick some googly eyes on it and stick it in a cool box. And that dude made like millions of dollars. You know what I mean? So just because the idea is stupid doesn't mean that other idiots won't buy it.
Yeah, most of those inventions don't last. Don't last.
No, that's
long.
true. But I'm just saying that you can't just shit on an idea right out of the gate because it's like you never know like what idiots will pay for. So, but I do feel like one of the whole jokes of the movie is that his dad's inventions are stupid and don't work. And you know what I mean? And it's like, and it kills me that they're still trying to use them. Even when the dad's not there. Like the dad's not even there to be like, hey, why aren't you using my egg breaker thing with the chicken head on it? Or why aren't you using the orange juicer that like sprays shit all over? Why aren't you using that?
Even when they're not labor-saving devices.
Even when he's not there, they're still using them. And I'm like, you don't have to. You could just, if you're making orange juice, just squeeze the orange with your hand. It will be like much better.
Remember that stupid thing they used to try to sell you on TV? It was like an electric toothbrush with a fucking spike on the end of it, and you stabbed it inside of an egg, and it beaded the egg inside the
without it's like why
shell. Just some stupid shit.
It just seems like really. I don't like those kitchen gadgets that only do one thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just,
no, that's why Ronco kept adding. And if you act now, we will also include. And they start. The next thing you know, it's fucking 40 things, all for the low price of fucking $19.99. Okay, look, let's get back to the fucking thing.
But yeah, seriously.
Because they knew what they were doing.
They definitely did.
Yeah.
So yeah, did we even mention that Phoebe Cates is in this? Because Phoebe Cates is in this.
Yeah, I mean when I was in Korea in the army, all our Katusas, which are Korean army augmentations, the U.S. Army, they're the Koreans that work for us, the young Korean soldiers. They fucking love Phoebe Cates.
Well, she's darling.
They have posters of her and shit.
Yeah. Well, she was, especially after Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which came out before this. And actually, there was a little bit, I don't think it was controversy, but I think when they were first talking about casting her in this, everybody's like, well, she was the boob girl from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Isn't she a little racy to be in this one or something like that? But they wanted her anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't even think the Koreans knew about that. They just fucking had posters.
They didn't know about that, and they still loved her.
Yeah, they still loved her. Yeah, there was something about the way she looked. I don't know if she's Amerasian or something, but there was just something about the way that she looked with Korean guys. In the very early 90s, just like
she's super cute.
Loved Phoebe Cates, and that was like the most famous American woman in Korea was Phoebe Cates.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was. Like
she was pretty famous here too, but you know what I mean.
No, that was their version of Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
You know,
See,
that was
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's like fascinating.
It was back then.
That's cool though. I like hearing stuff like that.
And we were kind of mystified, like her. I mean, she was cute, but...
I mean, we like Phoebe Cates, too,
but... no, for them, it was like Marilyn Monroe.
They were like...
Or just,
She's the ideal American woman, Phoebe Cates.
Yeah.
Popping
kind of like their version, kind of like, remember how big Farrah Fawcett was in the 70s?
Yeah, with that feathered hair and that swimsuit.
Yeah. Phoebe Cates was in Korea like Farrah Fawcett.
That's hilarious.
In the early 90s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they loved her.
But yeah, so she had been in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, like I said, and then she was in this movie. And I guess she, like Zach Galligan, the kid that played Billy, he was, I think he'd been in a couple things, but he was like he was pretty new. Like they picked him because him and Phoebe Cates like had really good chemistry with one another. But I think one of the things that people always talk about when they talk about this movie is Phoebe Cates, my dad dressed as Santa and died in the chimney speech,
Yeah.
and that's why I hate Christmas. Now, the funny thing about that is that it was in the original script, because like I said, original script was way darker. And a lot of the producers didn't want it in there because they're just kind of like, yeah, this is supposed to be a black comedy, but that speech, we're not really sure if that's supposed to be funny or if it's supposed to be sad or what are we supposed to be feeling about it. It's like they were kind of, they thought it was too ambiguous or too ambivalent, or that it was like too weird, like tonally. But Steven Spielberg, he wasn't a big fan of it, but he's basically like, look, Joe Dante, I picked him as director. It's his movie. So if he wants to leave it in, he can leave it in. So Joe Dante wanted to leave it in because he's like, to me, that speech is like the encapsulation of the whole tone of that movie, where it's just kind of like this fucking, it's almost kind of like a sick joke. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of funny, but then, and they said when they screened it, like, for audiences, like, the audiences thought it was pretty funny, too, even though it's a pretty fucked up story. It's basically, it's an urban legend. I had heard that urban legend before I even saw the movie. Although, it has actually happened a few times. I don't remember if it was a Santa Claus specifically trying to come down the chimney, but I think that there was a case, or at least one, of a kid that was trying to get back in his, I was trying to break into a house or something like that, like down the chimney, and like fell and broke his neck or got stuck. Yeah. And then like he died.
I think it's the same case. There was a kid that went missing.
Yeah.
They didn't find his ass for years. And then they went, they either sold this abandoned house or they were getting ready to demolish the house. And I think maybe somebody went in there to move into that house. But it was bad. The house was vacant for many years. And they found his fucking rotten ass in the damn chimney.
Can you imagine? I think
the chimney was plugged and they started a fire or something in there. Or they smelled it, or man, I can't remember all the details.
That's what she says in the story. So I can't really remember. I mean, yeah, you would think. I don't know. Now I have to look it up. I'm sure that's happened more than once, right? I mean,
he was trying to break into the house without breaking in, so he just tried to go down the chimney. He was a teenager.
See, that's what I thought too. He was trying to like get back. He was trying to sneak back in because it was like after curfew or something, right? Or was he trying to break into someone else's house?
He was trying to break into somebody.
Oh, okay.
It was a house that wasn't owned.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
All right, and it had been vacant for a while. He was trying. I think it had stuff in it. You know, I'm kind of imagining a place where somebody died and it was locked up. You know what I mean? The family locked it up and there was still stuff in there. He was going to go in there and kind of burglarize it, but he wanted to sneak in. He didn't want to break in any windows or anything to get in. So he just went down the chimney, evidently. That's what they think.
Don't go down the chimney, kids.
And he got stuck and couldn't get out.
It won't end
died in there. So he was probably in there for 7 days dying of thirst.
Yikes.
Imagine that. Bad way
I mean,
to go.
at least in the Gremlins story, like the dad like slipped and broke his neck and was dead immediately, instead of like just being stuck in there and not being able to get out, because that would really suck. Also,
it probably got narrow as it went down, and you got wedged in there. See, that's what
I think. It depends on the chimney. Like I have, this is Florida. We don't. Some people have fireplaces, but like my mom's house has a fireplace, but you don't really get to use it all that much because it's always hot as shit.
Decoration.
But yeah, it's look how fancy I can use some room that I that I don't need, that I don't ever use.
All right, this movie here. Some people want to say that this is one of Spielberg's best movies. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's one of his best, though. I'd much rather take Raiders of the Lost Ark, or really my favorite thing that he did was probably Close Encounters. I love that movie.
I know you do. Yeah.
It
would be hard for me to pick. Probably Raiders of the Lost Ark if I had to pick a favorite Steven Spielberg movie. You know what I mean?
That one's fully encapsulated, but there's something about fucking that little kid getting sucked out through the doggy door, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That actually used to scare me when I was little.
What was his name? Barry. His mom, Barry, and the fucking kid gets taken out.
Yeah, aliens are like, hey, I'll be taking that kid.
Yeah, they added
a snack on him on the way back.
I always wanted to see what was inside the damn alien craft, and then they added scenes to show what was in there.
Because everyone was like, what
the fuck was in there? Yeah.
It's kind of like, what, your budget run out? God damn it. Yeah. But yeah, so this one, I wanted to mention too, Polly Holiday in this, who I talked about briefly, Mrs. Deagle, who is like a gigantic asshole in this movie. She's obviously supposed to be a combination of
the Wicked Witch.
The Wicked Witch of the West, especially, and because she straight up says to Billy, I'm going to kill your dog.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? So, I mean, on several occasions. So she's kind of got that going on. And I love how she gets killed in this. It's delightful. Yeah. I mean, because not only this cranky old... She's also supposed to be kind of like Scrooge, too, because she's kind of... She owns most of the town. She has the... Bill. Yeah, she owns, like... she has all the mortgages on people's houses, and everybody's like, hey, man, we're going broke. And it's like, can you give us an extension? And she's like, fuck you! You know what I mean? She's
freeloaders.
It's kind of shit like that. So this is very Scroogey. So I love that they not only have the Gremlins, like, fuck up her little chairlift thing, like, in her house, and she goes flying up the fucking stairs, but they also, like, throw her out there. She breaks the window and goes flying across the fucking... They're like, fuck you, old lady. We're, like, throwing you out. Like I said, it's just... It's very funny that the 80s were a very different time. This ostensibly kids movie had all of this kind of... all of this death in it. All of this violence in it. There was, I think at one point, because Phoebe Cates' character, she works at the bar, right? And all the Gremlins, like, take over the bar. And I think one of them at one point has, like, a ski mask on and is, like, trying to stick her up, like, with a gun. Yeah. And and at the end, when they're doing the big fight with Stripe in the department store... Like, Stripe tries to kill Billy. He straight up shoots him with a crossbow arrow. Yeah. And then he hits him with a bat or something like that. And then, like, he tries to kill him with a fucking chainsaw.
Yeah.
They're not... And he shoots at him and he misses and shit like that. They weren't fucking around.
It wasn't a kid's movie in the way that you
not really
call a kid's movie. It was for young adults and teenagers and adults and, you know, kids at like 10, 11. You know, they like that kind of shit.
Yeah, like I said, I was 12 or 13 when I saw it. And I really I think the reason that movies like this have endured, maybe more than any other genre, because this is kind of like its own genre. Yes, you could call it horror comedy, but it was kind of like this weird, like, liminal sort of movie where it's kind of like too scary for kids, but it's like not scary enough for grown-ups.
Yeah, well, the movie delivered if you were a kid, because, you know, the Gremlins were a threat. They were shooting at people. They were shooting each other.
They killed people.
They were shooting each other. They were smoking and being bad and fucking up the theater. And they were, you know, one of them was dressed up like a woman and the other one was dressed up like a blues singer. And so, you know, it's just... It delivered when you were a kid. You were like, yeah, that's badass. Oh, yeah. Oh, he shot the other one. Yeah, yeah.
He did. He shot one of the other Gremlins. Straight up shot him in the face.
So it wasn't talking down to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that was the appeal.
Right.
Like,
just
of these types of movies.
When I was a kid, 77, I saw Star Wars in the theater. My dad took me to see it, and it was this fantastic science fiction movie that just really appealed to kids, but it didn't talk down to you. It was like I was enjoying an adult movie and understanding it.
Yeah.
So that it had that same kind of...
And like I said, it's not, you know, Gremlins is violent. I mean, like I said, the Gremlins are actually threatening, and they do actually kill people in this movie. But also, it's not so gory and so over the top that a kid couldn't watch it. And like you said, I think that there's like a really good... You know, it's kind of the same liminal space, like I said, that had like Monster Squad and like movies like that are kind of kid-oriented, you know, or have like kids as the main characters or as, you know, sideline characters. But they're not so scary to be like horror movies, but they still like have a lot of elements in them that kids would find scary, but
I would say
they still want to watch it.
Poltergeist was a little bit scarier.
Yeah.
But really, out of all the Steven Spielberg movies, for me, Close Encounters was the one that creeped me out the most. Because that's presented in a very realistic way.
I think that's kind of what makes that one creepy.
It's realistic.
Although I will still say that Poltergeist is probably... Although Tobe Hooper maybe directed that, so we don't really know.
Yeah.
But Steven Spielberg...
For me, Close Encounters was a spooky, creepy movie that aliens are coming to get you and they're controlling people. And then it kind of ends up with a happy ending. They give the people back and you get to see them and they're doing sign language. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then they split. You know what I mean? So
we just took him for a little while. Yeah. We just did a little anal probe. It's fine.
The build up to during the Close Encounters when you weren't really sure what was going to happen.
Well, yeah, because you didn't know what these
what's
aliens.
Gonna happen. Right? Yeah.
But like I said, I feel like another thing too before we end and I forget about it. Another thing I wanted to say too about Gremlins is that this, maybe you don't catch this because I don't think I caught it like the first few times I watched it, but I was watching it again last night. This is kind of a very anti-technology movie. Did you notice?
Most movies were anti-technology.
I guess they were kind of. I mean, not only that, but because you had to think like the dad was an inventor and was like inventing all this stupid shit that didn't do what it was supposed to do and it just broke and everything. But also, the whole thing about the mystical Asians and their little creature, and they said, just these very 3 simple rules, and then, they give it to the white people, and the white people just fuck everything up, and everybody in the town is dead, pretty much. It looks like. They don't really, specify, but it kind of looks like everyone's dead. And then, they have to blow up the theater and, kill all the gremlins and stuff. And so then Mr. Wing, the guy comes back and he's just like, yeah, you bitches, fuck this all up. I'm taking this back. You guys are not ready. You're letting him watch TV. He even says that. Why are you letting him watch TV? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's very, very kind of like...
Well, the message is that American consumer culture was not ready for access to Mogwai. Yeah. They would fuck that shit up.
They did fuck that shit up.
Because they did fuck it up.
They did
right.
fuck it up. There's I knew that one.
Right. So, that's what they were talking about. It is an anti-technology, anti-mass market, anti-consumerism message, which that's really what America has always been.
Which is funny because they marketed the shit out of this movie.
Right.
I mean, there was all kind of toys that
this goes back to the times of fucking robber barons and the railroads and J.P. Morgan and all these guys. They really fucked America up. I mean, they hurt a lot of people in their rise to power. But they also built the infrastructure of the U.S.
We've always had a very ambivalent relationship with that.
And that's coming back around with big tech and shit. Now people are like, man, this technology can be used for evil. What are they going to do? They're going to use are they going to put a damn cell phone in your head and attach it with wires, and then they're going to control you remotely and fucking control what information you can have and can't have. They're going to make you think for yourself because it's too dangerous. Or they're going to think for you because it's too dangerous for you to think for yourself. That's the kind of shit. Technology's a good thing, but it can be used for evil.
Well, it's just kind of like anything else. Right. Any new developments are kind of like a double-edged
sword. Here's an example. In one of the newer Batman movies, Batman makes a damn device that listens to all the fucking spoken voices through everybody's cell phones and all their technology, so he can find was it the Joker?
To find
one of the bad guys.
Years, yeah.
All right. And this thing was like the ultimate spy device. You could find out any information you wanted. But in the end, Batman, once he gets the bad guy, he says, fuck this, and he destroys that program.
Although somebody else will just come up with
Well, that was the morality of then, and that was what? Back in the 2000s? I think it was 2000 something, with Batman Begins, and I think it was the second one after that. Now we have that. It's called Google, basically. They do that.
Yeah.
And you don't see them turning that shit off for their reasons. I'm very suspicious of corporations and their fucking access to this kind of power. You don't even really want nation states with that kind of power. It takes you back to the fucking Ridley Scott's vision of the future with Wayland Industries and fucking all these. What was the one from the new one? Fucking was making the holographic girl. What was the name of that company? Wallace. Wasn't it Wallace? Yeah. Just I'm skeptical. I'm fucking scared of all that shit.
Yeah.
If it's bad, they'll do it. If it makes money. Yeah.
But so Gremlins, obviously a very a Christmas classic. A lot of people watch it on Christmas, along with this, Die Hard, some other ones. They did make a sequel to this, obviously, in 1990, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, which actually was a lot more of a comedy, but it was actually like a satire. They satirized the first one. They satirized the commercialism of the first one, like all the toys and stuff that had come out. And they satirized the very idea of sequels. I feel like I didn't like the sequel when it first came out, like when I saw it, but I think it holds up better today than it did at the time. I think back then, people didn't really they're like, what? I wanted more of like Gremlins, like a horror comedy.
Yeah, he wanted that. He wanted more of that.
Whereas the second one is just more like a straight up satirical comedy that's like making fun of the first one, sort of. You know, and making fun of the, like I said, the idea of sequels, you know, in general.
If you like a movie and you want more of that, you can always go to the fucking Italian market. The Italians will just give you more of that.
Yeah, it's not going to be as good, but you know what I mean? Not usually.
They're just going to rename it like Critters.
I do feel like Gremlins was kind of this, because so many like knockoffs came out of this. There was Ghoulies, there was Troll, there was Hobgoblins, which was on
2.
Mystery Science Theater. There was fucking what was the other one? Yeah, Critters.
Yeah.
God damn.
There were lots
there
and
was
lots
a
of
million of them.
Lots and lots of knockoffs.
Was Ghoulies the one that with the little
know.
one that was coming out of the toilet on the cover?
I think so.
I can't remember.
So
there were so many like little creatures go batshit insane movies that came out in the wake of Gremlins. It's just like fucking hysterical. Like to think about.
Most of them bad.
Well, yeah, and in the case of Hobgoblins, legitimately terrible, but made a good Mystery Science Theater episode. So I'm not going to shit on it too hard because that's like legit one of my favorite episodes because that movie is just so awful. All right, so I guess that'll do it for our movie retrospective of Gremlins. Yeah. Everybody have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Bye.